Hey y'all, today's lesson is adding and subtracting decimals. Again, you worked in sixth grade with decimals a lot, and the only new twist today is that you're going to have negatives and you need to use your integer rules. So just a few reminders about decimals. You must line the decimals up when you're adding and subtracting. So you always have to make sure your decimal is right underneath the other. And you will use zeros as placeholders. Let's say a decimal is longer on one number than the other, then you can use zeros as placeholders. You have to follow your integer rules, which means same signs you add, different signs you subtract, or you touch twice if it's a subtraction problem. And then if a number has no decimal, it comes at the end. Just like you put a period at the end of a sentence, a decimal comes at the end of the number. So think in terms of where you would put a period for language arts. All right, some examples. Example 1, negative 134.6 plus 104.2. I already know that these are different signs, so I'm going to subtract, and I've already lined them up. Notice I have my decimals lined up, and in this problem I don't need any placeholders, so I can subtract. 6 minus 2 is 4, 4 minus 4 is 0, 3 minus 0 is 3, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So I have subtracted and I've gotten 30.4. I know that this one is bigger. I have more negatives than I do positives, so my answer is going to be negative 30.4. Again, the only difference is now you're using your integer rules and with the knowledge that you learned last year in sixth grade about decimals. Let's do another example. Example 2, 24.6 minus 38. So you need to touch twice. And now it is 24.6 plus negative 38. I have different signs, so I'm going to subtract. I already put 38 on top. Notice 38 doesn't have a decimal point, so I'm going to put it at the end. And I'm going to use a 0 as a placeholder. So that's what we were talking about, using zeros as placeholders. I have to borrow. You cannot take 6 away from 0. So we're going to borrow. The 8's going to become a 7. And the 0 is going to become a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4. Bring down my decimal. 7 minus 4 is 3. 3 minus 2 is 1. And then I have different signs. This one is bigger, so my answer is going to be negative 13.4. Negative 13.4. So I have some for you try. Number 3, you try negative 88.89 plus 70.5, and number 4, 5.67 minus negative 0.8. So I want you to pause the video, and then when you're ready to see my explanation, restart the video. This one right here is same signs, so I'm going to add. I have to line up my decimals. So 88.89, 70.5. I need to put in a 0 as a placeholder right here. And now I can add, because these are same signs. 9 plus 0 is 9. 8 and 5 is 13. Bring down your decimal. 8, 9, and 8 and 7 is 15. The last step is to decide if my answer is going to be positive or negative, and since these are both negative, I know that my answer is going to be negative. And that is how you do number 3. Let's move on to number 4. It is subtraction, so I'm going to touch twice. And now it's just turned into a regular addition problem. There's no negatives anymore. So I need to line up my decimals. 5.67, 0.8. And again, I need to put in a placeholder. I'm going to add. So 7, 14, and 6. And my answer is positive because both of those are positive. So 6.47 and negative 159.39. All right, here is a real world example. Jill needs 10 meters of board to make a border for her garden. 10 meters is what she needs. In her garage, she has pieces that are 2.75, 3.2, 1.65, and 2.6. So she has 1, 2, 3, 4. She has 4 pieces of board in her garage. Does she have enough? So over here I've put she needs 10, and these are the 4 pieces that she has. There are a couple of ways to do this. I'm just going to show you one method. I'm going to add up all that she has and then compare that to 10 to decide, does she have enough? So I need a couple of placeholders, and I'm going to add up all these decimals. 5050 is 10. 1 and 7 is 8, plus 2 is 10, plus 6 is 16, plus 6 is 22. Bring down your decimal. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7, plus 1 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So right now, she has 10.2 meters of board. So I ask you, does she have enough? She needs 10, she has 10.2. So does she have enough? And the answer is yes, she has enough. Barely, but she has enough. Here's another real world example about Bob, good old Bob. Bob wants to buy a sweater for $35.75, a shirt for $19.95, oh, let me underline, and pants for $27.50. How much change would he get if he pays $100? So you might be thinking, what about tax? Let's just pretend it's tax-free weekend in August. Or let's pretend we're in a state. I know up north there's a state. Maybe it's like New Jersey or Delaware, or I know there's a state somewhere up north where there's no tax. You can look it up and tell me tomorrow. But let's just pretend there's no tax. So I have over here a sweater for $35.75, a t-shirt or just a shirt for $19.95, and pants for $27.50. How much change would he get from $100? Again, there are a couple of different ways to approach it. One way would be to add all these up and then subtract from 100. Another way is you could just continuously subtract these from 100. But because the objective today is adding and subtracting, I'm going to show you how to add these up and then subtract from 100. So we're going to add all these up. I don't need any placeholders. So 5 and 5 is 10. 8 plus 9 is 17. Plus 5 is 22, I think. 8, 10, 17, 22. 2 and 5 is 7. Plus 9 is 16. Plus 7 is 23. Whoops, bring down your decimal. 23. 2 and 3 is 5. Plus 1 is 6. Plus 2 is 8. So 83.20. 83.20 is how much he has spent. But my question says, how much change would he get? So in order to figure out change, we would have to subtract that from 100. So 100 minus 83.20. Now this is a lot of borrowing. So here we go. Borrow, borrow, borrow. From the 1 becomes a 0. That becomes a 9. 9. And actually, oops, you could do 0 minus 0 is 0. And this would become a 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. Bring down your decimal. 9 minus 3 is 6. And 9 minus 8 is 1. So it looks like he'll be getting $16.80 change from his $100 bill. There are a couple of ways that you could check your work. You could add up $16.80 and $83.20 to make sure that equals $100. You could add up $16.80 plus these 3 and make sure it's $100. Or you could take $100, you could subtract $16.80, and then that should leave you with $83.20. So there's a lot of different ways to check your work. So here is a you try problem. Not a real world, but I've given you decimals, both positive and negative, and both addition and subtraction. So I want you to try. I'm giving you a tip. First thing you're going to do is touch it twice. So right here and right here. And I've touched it twice for you already and shown you. So pause the video, and then when you're ready to hear the explanation, replay back. All right. You've got a couple of options. You can do the 2x2 method, or you can add up all your positives and add up all your negatives. Whichever one works best for you, you would get the right answer as long as you're doing it correctly. I'm going to show you how to add up your positives and add up your negatives. So I have a negative 18.7 and a negative 4.5. So 18.7 and 4.5, that's 12, 9, 13. So 23.2, that would be your negatives. And then your positives, 27.7 and 14.3, 7 and 3 is 10, 8 and 4 is 12, 2 and 2 is 4. So I've gotten a negative 23.2 and a positive 42. These are different signs, so I'm going to subtract 42.0, 23.2, and I get borrow. 10 minus 2 is 8. I got to borrow again. 11 minus 3 is 8. 3 minus 1 is 1. 18.8. And then is it going to be positive or negative? Which one is bigger? My 42 is bigger, so that means my answer is going to be positive, 18.8. So this was a really quick review of adding and subtracting decimals, and the only new thing to our lesson was the positives and negatives.